pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the Vietnam Veterans News Podcast. News of interest about Vietnam veterans from a Vietnam veteran. Now, here's your host, Mac Payne.
This is Mac Payne here with episode 1845 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. News about the Vietnam War and the brave veterans who served there, as told to you by yours truly, a Vietnam veteran. One of the most important aspects of the war in Vietnam that we must never, ever forget is that of the MIAs and POWs. There are still a good number of them unaccounted for to this day, 50 years later. We must never, never give up looking for these brave Americans. One of my most feared thoughts I had as I was flying a Cobra gunship in the environs of Sapon, Laos, was the possibility my aircraft could go down in enemy territory and I would not be found. It haunts me to this day. That's why I am so emphatic in encouraging everyone to never forget our MIAs and POWs. We have a big day coming up this year. It's on September the 18th. Congress has decreed that the third Friday of every year will be designated as the POW-MIA Day, where we can remember them. The good people in the great state of Rhode Island are doing something that is a wonderful example to us all in remembering our MIAs and POWs. I am going to share a story with you about what they're doing up there to help you remember and encourage you to do the same thing wherever you live to help remember our MIAs and POWs. The story I'm going to share with you appeared in the Providence Journal. Title of it is Veterans Voice, Still Looking for MIAs Around the World. This story was provided by Mary K. Talbot in a special to the Journal. She did a great job describing what they're doing up in Rhode Island to keep remembering these MIAs and POWs. Just in case you are not familiar with the location of Rhode Island, it appears right up there in New England, tucked in between Connecticut and Massachusetts. Size-wise, Rhode Island is not as big as states like Texas, Montana, and Alaska, but the people there in that state have big hearts, as big as any in the country when it comes to remembering our MIAs and POWs. Sit back, relax, turn off all your distractions, including the TV, your cell phone, and get rid of all the loud people in the vicinity so you can listen to this very important story. It's something we have to do. Without any further ado, let's take a look at Mary Talbot's story about what they're doing in the great state of Rhode Island to remember our POWs and MIAs. Dateline, Providence, Rhode Island. Those that grew up in the 1970s remember the POW-MIA bracelets that Voices in Vital America created and distributed during the Vietnam War. If you would like to see what one of those bracelets looked like, go over to the podcast website, VietnamVeteranNews.com, check out episode 1845, and there you will see a genuine POW-MIA bracelet. Continuing, the simple nickel-plated bands cost $2.50 each, or $3 for a copper version, and held the name, rank, and date of loss of prisoners of war and those missing in action. The metal cuff was intended to be worn until the person named on it was accounted for, regardless of the time that elapsed. More than 5 million bands were sold by 1975. With 1,246 Department of Defense personnel from the Vietnam War still missing, how many Americans still wear those bracelets and think about the lives they represent? I hope all of them are still wearing those bracelets. We must never forget those who are missing over there in the jungles and mountains of Vietnam. Continuing. The third Friday of September has been designated POW-MIA Recognition Day. In a proclamation signed by Rhode Island Governor Gina Raimondo in 2019 commemorating the day, she said, "We will never forget the bravery and sacrifices of those who have served our country and always support our nation's effort to account for our missing, alive, and dead, and return them to the United States." The governor also mentioned the 6 Rhode Island servicemen from the Vietnam War that are still missing. I'm going to read those names for you because you just might know one of these individuals, and it just might reinforce your need to remember them. Here they are, the 6 MIAs from Rhode Island. See if you might know any of them. Navy Commander Laurent Norbert Dion of Providence. He was declared missing in North Vietnam in 1967. Air Force Major Curtis Abbott Eaton of Wakefield. He was also declared missing in North Vietnam in 1966. Army First Lieutenant Kenneth B. Goff of Warwick. He was declared missing in South Vietnam in 1967. Air Force Captain George Henry Jordanis of Central Falls, South Vietnam, 1967. Army PFC James Michael Ray, South Vietnam, 1968. And Navy Lieutenant J.G. Edward Brennan Shaw of Cranston. He was declared missing in Vietnam in 1965. The writer continued, "As we recognize the 45 years that have elapsed since the end of the Vietnam War, we need to remember the 6 Rhode Island families who are still awaiting the return of their loved ones." The U.S. government continues its recovery efforts to this day. Through the Defense POW-MIA Accounting Agency, it continues to search for missing personnel around the world. More than 81,900 Americans remain missing from World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the Cold War, and the Gulf Wars. In Vietnam, 4 joint field activities were conducted last fiscal year. During the first quarter of 2020, recovery teams excavated sites in Quang Binh, Hoa Tin, and Quang Ninh provinces before COVID-19 hit Vietnam. The virus suspended the joint excavation, but 3 all-Vietnamese recovery teams continued searching sites in Vien Phuc, Thanh Hoa, and Quang Binh provinces. Just love those Vietnamese names. The black ink on most MIA POW bracelets has probably worn off, and many have been tucked away in drawers ever since, but the names and dates are still etched in people's minds. With the approach of POW-MIA Recognition Day, start a conversation by wearing your bracelet once more, share your thoughts on social media, and start a discussion with your community. And take the time to mail a letter to the family of the POW-MIA for whom you wear your bracelet to let them know you are acknowledging their loved one's sacrifice on September the 18th. Letters can be sent to families by addressing them to the family of and the name of the missing person. Care of Department of Defense, Defense Prisoner of War Missing Personnel Office, 2400 Defense, Pentagon, Washington, D.C., 20301. Just for your information, that mailing address will be on the show notes for this podcast episode over at the podcast website, VietnamVeteranNews.com. I would encourage everybody to write a letter to one of those families. In addition to the 6 in Rhode Island, there will be a link to where you can find names of other MIAs so you can send letters to them. The families of the MIAs have suffered terribly for 50 years, not knowing what happened to their loved one. Continuing with the story, the familiar black and white National League of Families POW-MIA flag reads, "You are not forgotten." Let's use POW-MIA Recognition Day as a reminder to honor that pledge. One way you can do that is to send a letter to an MIA family. You don't have much time for this year. You can still do it. Mail that letter. It'll be there by Friday. Now, here is what they're doing up in Rhode Island to make sure all those residents there remember the MIAs. Operation Stand Down Rhode Island will continue its popular outreach weekend for the 28th consecutive year on September the 18th and 19th. The format and location will be changed in 2020, however, to comply with health and safety restrictions during the pandemic. This year's events will be limited to Veterans Administration eligible veterans, no dependents, and all attendees must wear masks and practice social distancing. We believe the event to be such a staple in the veteran community and far too important for our struggling veterans to cancel in light of the global pandemic. So we have chosen to scale it back and modify the event to ensure veterans are still able to access the most essential services available, said Eric Wallen, the organization's executive director. Veterans should arrive at a new location, Johnston Veterans War Memorial Park, located at 1583 Hartford Avenue, just there on the west side of Providence, beginning at 8 a.m. on the 18th. Everyone who arrives will be screened for COVID-19. All veterans cleared for participation will be shuttled a mile from the park to the Anthony DeQuatro Veteran Complex. Once veterans arrive at their destination, they will have access to VA medical health screenings, flu shots, and pneumonia immunizations, along with a wide array of supportive services, legal consultations, assistance with completing disability claims, VA enrollment, Social Security disability claims, and applying for housing services will be offered. All participants will get a free bagged lunch and be offered packages of personal hygiene products and food before they leave. The Horace Kimball Foundation and Bank Rhode Island helped underwrite the cost of the day's events. Operation Stand Down Rhode Island partnered with the Rhode Island Public Transportation Authority to provide free transportation to the event. Bus service will begin at 8 a.m. both days from Kennedy Plaza to the park. The last returning bus will depart at 4 p.m. each day from the Veteran Complex in Johnston. Mary Talbot ends her story with this request. Do you know a living veteran who would be willing to share their story? Do you offer a program or service focused on serving retired military? Are you planning an event aimed at veterans or their families? If so, send Mary Talbot an email. Her email address is ThoseWhoServedAmerica@gmail.com. For your convenience, that contact information will also be on the show notes for this podcast episode number 1845. I share the entire article just to let you know what the good people up in Rhode Island are doing to honor their veterans. They help to remember the POWs by providing service to their living veterans who did come home. In this Vietnam veteran's opinion, they're doing a wonderful thing up there in Rhode Island, and I greatly appreciate it. I appreciate it so much, I am hereby issuing the state of Rhode Island an official Vietnam Veteran News podcast salute for what they're doing to help remember our POWs and MIAs and provide services to our living veterans who did make it home from over there. Thank you very much. We appreciate it greatly, and we wish you the best. This is Mac Payne closing out episode 1845 of the Vietnam Veteran News Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to these programs. You are cordially invited to return again soon and often to listen to more that will be coming your way on this podcast, the Vietnam Veteran News.
How about that? Ain't that a mess?